High above a scarred continent, where the scars of industry and fire had already begun to stain the landscape below, the Interceptor slid into position with a calm that felt almost unnatural. Its twin engines hummed steadily, not screaming, not straining, but carrying the aircraft forward with the confidence of a machine built for a single purpose. Sunlight spilled across the canopy, blinding and beautiful, turning the clouds into sheets of molten gold. Ahead, the bomber formation advanced in perfect order, silver aircraft locked together like pieces of a single immense machine, their contrails stretching backward as if the sky itself were being ridden upon. From a distance they appeared invincible, a flying fortress multiplied dozens of times over, bristling with guns and discipline. Yet the pilot did not see invincibility. He saw patterns, weaknesses, subtle signs invisible to anyone without long experience. He saw the slight drift of an outer aircraft fighting turbulence, the faint lag of another struggling to maintain position. He knew that fear, fatigue, and damage always left traces. His aircraft was not designed to dance or duel. It was designed to strike. He eased the nose down, letting gravity add speed, closing the distance without urgency. This was not a moment for haste, but for certainty. When he fired, the recoil slammed through the cockpit like a physical blow, a violent reminder of the power he had unleashed. The shell crossed the gap almost instantly, tearing into a bomber's wing root and detonating from within. Fire erupted, metal peeled away, and the perfect geometry ahead fractured. The formation jolted, gunners spun their turrets in confusion, and the pilot rolled calmly away, already climbing back toward the safety of the sun. That single strike represented far more than an isolated act of aerial violence. It was the culmination of a philosophy that had taken root years before the war had fully revealed its shape. Long before the skies filled with contrails and burning wreckage, planners and engineers had debated what the future of air combat would look like. Many believed that agility and individual skill would fade in importance, replaced by speed, range, and overwhelming firepower. They imagined aircraft that would not need to outturn an opponent, only to outrun and outgun them. These machines would dominate through strength rather than finesse, crushing resistance with decisive blows delivered from beyond reach. It was a seductive vision, perfectly aligned with an age obsessed with engines, steel, and industrial capacity. In conference rooms and design offices, the idea hardened into doctrine. Aircraft grew larger, heavier, and more complex, their noses packed with cannon, their wings stretched for range, their crews reduced to essential roles. Each new requirement seemed logical on its own, yet together they created machines that embodied confidence bordering on arrogance. Early successes reinforced belief. When such aircraft met weaker opponents, they appeared unstoppable. Victories piled up, reports praised their effectiveness, and the doctrine seemed vindicated. Few wanted to listen to dissenting voices warning that weight and complexity carried hidden costs. Fewer still were willing to admit that the enemy would adapt just as quickly, if not faster. The sky, after all, was not static. It was a battlefield that evolved with terrifying speed. As the war expanded, those hidden costs began to surface with increasing clarity. Against modern, agile fighters flown by experienced pilots, the heavy interceptors struggled in ways that could no longer be ignored. They were fast in a straight line, but once forced into close combat, their mass became a liability. Turns were wide, acceleration sluggish, and every evasive maneuver bled precious energy. Pilots reported that once engaged, escape was often impossible. Losses mounted, formations returned depleted, and confidence wavered. Yet instead of abandoning the concept, leadership doubled down. The belief had become too deeply ingrained, too much prestige invested, to admit failure. Engineers were ordered to fix the problems without fundamentally changing the idea itself. Airframes were modified, tails reshaped, wings adjusted, and control systems refined. Each iteration promised redemption. Each was described as the version that would finally make the theory work as intended. Factories continued production even as test pilots raised alarms. Accidents during training claimed lives before the aircraft ever met the enemy. Still, the program pressed on, fueled by pride, urgency, and the fear of admitting that years of effort had been misguided. The result was a cycle of redesign and disappointment, a desperate attempt to force reality to conform to doctrine rather than the other way around. Out of this struggle emerged a refined machine that at last seemed to fulfill its designer's intentions. Subtle changes made dramatic differences. Wings were reshaped to smooth airflow, eliminating the instability that had plagued earlier versions. The fuselage was lengthened just enough to restore balance, and control surfaces were strengthened and refined. More powerful engines transformed performance, granting higher speed, better climb, and improved handling across a wide range of conditions. For the first time, pilots reported that the aircraft felt predictable, even trustworthy. It could hold steady during high-speed attacks, recover cleanly from dives, and maintain control where its predecessors had betrayed their crews. Its armament was devastating, concentrated in the nose to deliver an immense head-on punch. Against bomber formations, it finally possessed the reach and power envisioned years earlier. When it entered combat, its impact was immediate. Bombers fell apart under its fire, formations broke, and for a brief period, hope returned. Propaganda seized upon every success, presenting the aircraft as a symbol of renewed dominance. Commanders spoke once more of turning the tide, of reclaiming control of the skies through superior firepower and engineering brilliance. Yet even as this new interceptor carved its mark into the air war, the environment around it continued to change. Enemy tactics evolved rapidly, and technological advances closed the gaps the heavy fighter relied upon. Escort fighters gained longer range, allowing them to remain with bomber formations deep into contested airspace. What had once been a window of vulnerability was sealed shut. The interceptor's greatest advantage, its ability to strike from beyond defensive fire, shrunk with every improvement made by its opponents. Encounters grew more dangerous. Attacks had to be timed perfectly, executed quickly, and followed by immediate disengagement. Any hesitation invited disaster. Pilots found themselves flying straight into walls of tracer fire, knowing that survival depended on seconds and luck as much as skill. Losses rose again, slowly at first, then alarmingly fast. The aircraft could still kill bombers, but it could no longer do so without paying an ever higher price. Each mission felt heavier, more exhausting, the sense of inevitability creeping into every briefing and debriefing. In response, leadership once again sought salvation in greater firepower. If existing guns were no longer enough, then larger ones would be installed. The interceptor's nose was fitted with a weapon so large it bordered on absurdity, a cannon originally designed for armored vehicles. Its shells were capable of destroying a bomber with a single hit, tearing wings from fuselages or igniting fuel in catastrophic explosions. Fired from long range, it allowed attacks from beyond the reach of defensive guns. On paper, it was the ultimate expression of the original doctrine. In practice, it transformed the aircraft into something dangerously compromised. The added weight upset balance and dulled responsiveness. Recoil was immense, sometimes feeling as if the aircraft had slammed into an invisible wall. Rate of fire was painfully slow, making every missed shot a costly mistake. Crews learned to fire once, perhaps twice, before breaking away, hoping that their aim had been true. When it worked, the results were spectacular. When it failed, the interceptor was left heavy, exposed, and vulnerable to fast-moving escorts eager for revenge. Despite these drawbacks, units flew the modified interceptors into battle with grim determination. For a time, their claims were impressive. Bomber losses mounted, and enemy crews reported explosions at fighter altitude, unsure what had struck them. From the ground, observers saw trails of smoke and fire spiraling downward, evidence that the heavy cannon could still exact a terrible toll. But statistics told only part of the story. Behind every claimed victory stood a shrinking pool of experienced pilots, dwindling fuel reserves, and factories struggling under constant attack. Replacement aircraft arrived slowly, if at all. Maintenance crews cannibalized damaged machines to keep others flying. Training hours were cut, and new pilots were rushed into combat with minimal preparation. The interceptor's successes became increasingly isolated, flashes of effectiveness in a sky that was otherwise slipping beyond control. The war of attrition favored the side that could replace losses faster, and in that contest, the heavy fighters' nation was already losing. As the months passed, the skies grew more hostile. Enemy fighters appeared in greater numbers, faster and more agile than anything before them. They attacked from above and behind, exploiting blind spots and overwhelming defensive guns before gunners could react. The Interceptor's crews adapted as best they could, flying in tighter formations, coordinating attacks, and relying on discipline and experience. Still, the balance had shifted irreversibly. What had once been a hunter now often felt like prey. Missions were aborted more frequently, aircraft returned riddled with holes, and many failed to return at all. Airfields themselves were no longer safe, targeted relentlessly by fighter bombers that destroyed aircraft on the ground. The Interceptor, once heralded as the backbone of air defense, was gradually pushed into secondary roles: reconnaissance, night harassment, and desperate local defense. Its original purpose faded as circumstances forced it into tasks it had never been designed to perform. Occasionally, chance intervened in unexpected ways. Navigation errors, mechanical failures, or simple exhaustion led to aircraft landing in enemy territory, surrendering intact machines to those they had been built to fight. These captured interceptors were studied carefully, their strengths admired, their flaws catalogued. Engineers and test pilots examined control systems, weapon installations, and innovative defensive concepts. Some ideas were praised for their ingenuity, others dismissed as impractical under combat conditions. The knowledge gained did not produce immediate new aircraft, but it informed tactics and training, helping bomber crews recognize and counter the interceptor's preferred attack profiles. In this way, even in capture, the aircraft continued to influence the war, though not in the way its designers had intended. For those who had believed in it most fiercely, this was another bitter irony layered atop many others. Meanwhile, within design offices and factories, efforts to refine the Interceptor continued almost out of habit. More armor was added to protect crews, more fuel to extend range, heavier guns to strike from farther away. Each change addressed a genuine concern, yet collectively they eroded the very qualities that had once made the aircraft effective. Performance margins narrowed until there was little left to spare. Proposed variants promised high-altitude capability, longer wings, or alternative materials to conserve resources, but few progressed beyond prototypes. Shortages, rushed production, and constant disruption ensured that even promising ideas failed to mature. The Interceptor became a symbol of a larger problem, a relentless pursuit of perfection in a context where adaptability and speed of decision mattered more. Resources poured into refining yesterday's solution, while tomorrow's challenges multiplied unchecked. By the time the program was finally abandoned, circumstances had rendered the decision almost meaningless. Fuel shortages grounded what remained, and Allied air supremacy ensured that any aircraft taking off did so at extreme risk. Production lines fell silent, unfinished airframes left to gather dust or be scrapped. The Interceptor's story did not end with a dramatic final battle, but with a quiet fading into irrelevance. Its crews were reassigned, its units dissolved, its name gradually disappearing from operational reports. And yet, its legacy endured in subtler ways. It served as a lesson written in aluminum and steel, demonstrating the danger of clinging too tightly to a single idea while the battlefield evolves. It showed how technical brilliance can be undermined by inflexibility, and how confidence, when unchecked, can become a trap. As the war drew toward its violent conclusion, a new sound echoed over test airfields: the piercing howl of jet engines. Sleek aircraft accelerated with a force that seemed unreal, climbing faster and flying higher than anything before them. They represented a future that had arrived too late to be fully realized. Compared to them, the heavy Interceptor looked like a relic from another era, its philosophy rooted in assumptions the jet age had already swept aside. History would remember it not as a failure, but as a transitional machine, born from ambition and shaped by belief, fighting fiercely within the limits of its time. It had promised control of the skies through strength and firepower, and for a brief moment, it nearly delivered. But wars are decided not only by power, but by timing and change. In the end, the Interceptor became what all such machines eventually become, a chapter in a larger story, a reminder that the sky belongs not to those who perfect the past, but to those who recognize the future before it arrives.